Hello and welcome to day 29 of 30 Days of Stories. Tomorrow's the last one, but I am considering continuing once a week, but shifting from Facebook, which I find very confusing, to YouTube. But I'll give you more details about that tomorrow. Some of you might know that I have become an accidental gardener. So I have never once suggested to anybody that I could do their garden, but a number of people have asked me to help, and I've ended up with too many customers now. But I equipped myself with a trailer and a whole load of tools. And a few days ago, I was driving down from our house here, which is on top of a ridge, along the ridge to a nearby village called Montalembert. And Montalembert is just a couple of kilometres away. And there's only really two houses between us and them. On the left-hand side is the local stonemason. And on the right-hand side are our good friends, Alan and Françoise. Now, Alain and Françoise live in Lille, and this is a maison secondaire, a holiday home. And it's in the compound of an old radar station set up by the Americans after the war, because this was a very good vantage point for checking to see if anything was going on that shouldn't be going on. But the radar station was decommissioned, and Alain and Françoise now live there. Now, Alain, I should tell you, is very organised, has a great attention to detail, and is always doing things the way they should be done. i.e., he's not like me, or I'm not like him. And a few days ago, I was driving to Montalembert with my car and trailer, and I had a strimmer, which was a bit too big for the trailer really, but I put it in anyway, and the head of the strimmer was hanging over the outside of the trailer. And anyone who knows anything about strimmers knows that the head can separate, and out comes the bobbin with the string on it and a little plastic bit to hold it together, and there's a spring. Well, by the time I got to Montalembert, the spring was still on the strimmer, hanging on by a thread, I don't know how, and the two plastic bits that make up the bobbin and the retaining plate were gone. And I thought, oh no, all that way between us and Montalembert, I can't possibly go and walk up and down both sides of the road looking for those. I'll just have to get a whole new head of the strimmer. That evening, I received a phone call from Alan, who had been mowing his lawn. And after he'd mown his lawn, he went outside his gates and mowed a strip of grass that's alongside the road outside his house, only to discover one plastic bit of a head of a strimmer. And he scratched his head and he thought to himself, now, who around here might have lost a head of a strimmer by casually driving, or carelessly, I should say, driving by? And he thought, might be Steve. So he rang me up. And I went along, recovered the one part, and between us, we did various mathematical calculations to try and decide how far away the second part might be, and we found it very quickly. So strimmer reassembled. But Alan is the sort of person who you expect to find things, and I'm the sort of person that you expect to lose things, or that I expect to lose things. And this whole story reminded me of something that happened 40 years ago when I was 17, or more than 40 years ago, when I was 17. And together with my good friend Andrew, we were friends with a couple of identical twins called Fiona and Claire. And it was we grew up in a Baptist church in Surrey, and it was traditional every Easter Sunday morning to go and climb the nearest hill and have a celebration service as the sun rose. It was called a sunrise service. We laughingly called it a sunrise service because over 20 years, I think I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times we saw the sun rise, but the time was at which the sun was rising. So anyway, on this particular year, Andrew and I invited Fiona and Claire to come to that service by boat, because the River Wey ran just along the bottom of the hill, which is called St Catherine's, that's between Guildford and Godalming. And if you ever take a train from Godalming to Guildford, then as you arrive in Guildford, you go through a very long tunnel which goes underneath St Catherine's, and you know you've got to get ready to get out if you want to get out at Guildford. So the riverway runs alongside the edge of St Catherine's Hill, and that's where we were headed. So we set out, and it was still dark, in a dinghy that I can't quite remember who it belonged to, with an outboard motor to drive us along. Very antisocial at that time in the morning, but we set off with high spirits and a lot of laughter. Unfortunately, along the way, the depth of the river got too shallow for the length of the motor, and the propeller struck a rock. Now, the propeller is so designed, it has a little pin that shears off to protect the propeller when it hits the ground. So the pin sheared, the motor kept running, but the propeller wasn't turning, and we were just drifting aimlessly in the riverway in the dark. Well, we managed to get to the bank and scrambled up to the main road, hoping to either find somebody who would give us a lift, or even better, find a small nail that would double up in the meantime as a shear pin to repair the outboard motor. Well, of course, the first car that came along was being driven by a great and good deacon of the church. And we flagged him down and he offered us a lift. We said, I don't suppose by any chance you have any nails in the car? And he said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. Why do you want it? And we explained that we had been coming along the riverway in a boat, the shear pin had sheared, and we wanted to continue our journey. He looked despairingly up to the sky, went down to the boot of his car, rummaged around, and came out with a variety of nails of all shapes and sizes, including one that we thought would just do the job. And so we gratefully accepted this. And as he drove off, he said to us, he said, God expects you to lose a nail, and he expects me to have a nail to give you. Well, I've been puzzling over that statement ever since. But we scrambled back down the bank, and would you believe it, that nail fitted beautifully in the slot to reconnect the propeller, and we were able to continue our journey and arrive a little bit late, it has to be said, to scramble up to the top of St Catherine's. And that was one of the years when the sun actually rose. There were no clouds, and it was a glorious morning, a glorious Easter morning. And it occurred to me as I scrambled around looking for the second bit of the strimmer head with my neighbour Alain this week that not much has changed in 40 years. See you tomorrow for the grand finale.